Strong words from Prime Minister Christie to the University of West Indies as he calls for greater collaboration and intervention. The stories ahead.
Also ahead tonight, 2 men believed to be linked to that $1 million drug bust off Long Island face a magistrate today.
And more bloodshed on the streets of the capital as a 20-year-old is killed overnight. The Bahamas Tonight starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Everyday.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Keishla Adderley.
And I'm Andrew Knowles. Thanks so much for joining us.
Topping the news, the region's leading tertiary institution receiving sharp criticism from Prime Minister Perry Christie as he called for greater participation and collaboration of the University of the West Indies and governments of the Caribbean.
Mr. Christie, who is rapidly developing a reputation around the region for advising governments and Caribbean people on how to shape and redevelop our recovering economies, says the disconnect between lecturers and reality must come to an end. The nation's leader was speaking to the leadership and management of the university at its annual general meeting. Tonight we get the story from Clint Watson.
Prime Minister Perry Christie has challenged the higher echelon of the University of the West Indies that it's time for the institution to do more. He says there ought to be a greater link between what is taught and public policy at the governmental level.
There is an extraordinary gap between what you teach and what your students execute and implement by way of the training when they go to the jobs. And that is why I have introduced an innovation at the school in Andros that we are creating now by saying to my government and getting their approval to append a commercial entity to each division, meaning that best commercial practices will have tutorial farms.
In fact, Mr. Christie says as the Bahamas develops its agricultural sector through the creation of the Bahamas Agricultural Marine Sciences Institute, UWI should have been playing a role.
The University of the West Indies, as the premier regional institution, should be front and center in this interchange. I should not have to look to the University of Florida or the University of Miami alone for the expertise to develop some of our own institutions.
Mr. Christie told executives of UWI that they should also be more heavily involved in the development of tourism, particularly because of its significance to the region in areas of revenue generation and employment. He outlined how governments, as a matter of policy, require developers to undertake environmental studies for their projects before approvals are granted. Here in the Bahamas, it's headed by the BEST Commission.
Why can't I look to you to provide these assessments? And why can't I have the developer pay you? Why can't I develop a bank of information that I could access at the university that will protect future generations of Bahamians and generations in the region?
Mr. Christie, however, expressed confidence in UWI and its ability to make a major contribution to the Caribbean. He says UWI should affect government policies.
You have to be intellectually secure enough to be able to question public policy in the most constructive way to advance the civilization of the Caribbean. In writings, in interventions, in talk, you must make it live for us.
In responding, Chancellor of the University, Sir George Arlene, spoke about Prime Minister Christie's passion. He acknowledged the fact that they are discussing similar issues in their meetings. He also used a quote from U.S. President Barack Obama in responding to Mr. Christie's request by saying, "Yes, we can." Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
Experienced VAT New Zealand consultants John Schuin and Don Barsh are in the Bahamas for several days to host candid discussions with the Bahamas government in drafting a formula on the proposed value-added tax reform system expected to be implemented July 1st. The duo played a pivotal role in the implementation of New Zealand's value-added tax system. In 2009, the VAT rate in New Zealand increased from 12.5% to 15%, and money raised reduced taxes in other other areas and assisted with social welfare. At a press briefing with the media at the Ministry of Finance this afternoon, the consultant shared the country's VAT challenges, its experiences, and how it all works for them. Consultant John Shewan talked about the approach they took to make VAT so successful there.
It is the compliance costs of running the value-added tax in New Zealand are very, very low. Why are they low? Because everything is taxed at the same rate, initially 10%, and there are virtually no exemptions in the New Zealand system. The only exemptions are financial services and rent. And rent is exempt because paying rent is so much like paying a mortgage. The feeling was you couldn't apply VAT to residential rent and not to financial services, and there was a feeling that applying it to financial services would be very difficult in practice.
Business consultant Don Brash says while he applauds the government for being constructive in listening to other groups like the Chamber of Commerce, he believes the July 1st deadline would be challenging for them if an aggressive educational campaign on the promotion and implementation of VAT or how it will work in the Bahamas isn't crafted sooner.
In the New Zealand context, we did act quite quickly. We implemented within about 6 months of the legislation being finalised. So you can do it, but it's still obviously going to be tight. The thing about the education programs is that they're ongoing. So it's not just a matter of we'll educate up to the implementation date and then we'll stop. The reason our educational campaign was so successful, and we're very proud of it, is that there was a commitment to an 18-month education program, 6 months of which was prior to the implementation date, but the most important part, or I think so, was the 12 months after implementation, where we had a series of detailed educational programs.
As the Bahamas awaits the implementation of a value-added tax set for July, our neighbors to the south, the Turks and Caicos Islands, vetoed VAT legislation and has opted to other tax options as a means to increase revenue. Deputy Premier of the Turks and Caicos Islands, the Honorable Akira Misick, who appeared on Daryl Miller Live this morning, says while there is evidence that VAT does work in some countries, they felt that form of taxation was not feasible for them.
VAT does work. It does. Turks and Caicos population, VAT does not work. 35,000 people. We're a consumer economy. We do not produce anything of constant use in the Turks and Caicos. I'm not sure how it would work here in the Bahamas. You have a much bigger population, 300,000+. There's VAT in Jamaica, there's VAT in Barbados, so our neighbors in the region have a value-added tax system in place. Whether it works for our two countries, I am not 100% sure. I know in Turks and Caicos, VAT would have squeezed the middle class a lot more than our proposed payroll or property tax.
It's an underground industry that may have found its way to our shores. In the ZNS Network News exclusive investigation, we pull the covers off of what may be emerging as a new and controversial industry in the Bahamas, pornography. Our Janelle Noel Ferguson takes a closer look into the hush-hush world of skin flicks in the Bahamas. Coming this Monday, April 28th, only on The Bahamas Tonight.
This segment of the news is brought to you by Shell Quality Fuels.